Nation FM.
All right, last day of Ramadan. Last day of Ramadan means the last day of this show as I take my own break, right? But perhaps it's important that we talk about Hajj operators. Keeping in mind we've been playing up this issue about numbers and quotas and how many people. So we now know that what's it about a 1,132, I think it is, that have been accredited to go for Hajj this year. South Africans, that is, right? The next step around that is who do they book with, and that information that came out yesterday from SAHUC. So let's talk about it to the president of SAHUC, Shaheen Essop. As always, thanks for your time and salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you, Ashraf, to everybody at Salam Media, and to the listeners and viewers out there.
So I understand when we last spoke, I think you guys said once you get accredited, you got like 10 days or so to make a decision, right? Does that still hold? You got like a week or so to make a call whether you're going to go and who you're going to book with?
Absolutely. The closing date for accredited pilgrims is the 13th of May at 1800 hours. 2 days thereafter, the 15th of May, is when the pilgrims must basically select their accredited operator. And some of the reasons behind this is obviously we're at a shortage of time. The Ministry of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia had basically given us our quota numbers quite late, and we need to get that process underway. If we delay that process, then contracts in the kingdom between the operator and the hoteliers, between the pilgrims and the operator, are going to have a knock-on and a ripple effect down the system. And we want to make sure that whatever the transition is, north to south, or south to north and north to south after, is going to be a smooth one, inshallah, for everybody that is going to be accredited and embarking on this journey.
Okay, so once people are accredited, I mean, besides some of the Hajj taxes abroad, you need to have the money, you need to have the time, you need to buy, pay for your plane tickets. But very importantly, from the SAHUC perspective, is you need to book your ticket through a tour operator, right, or an agent, as some may call it, right? And you've listed 4 operators only. And I'm aware from the period when I went for Hajj, I probably had a choice of 20. Goodness, we are not, we don't have much of a choice. Why is that this time around?
Well, first of all, the first thing one needs to understand is that unfortunately, in the last 2 years, we've had a breakaway of, the umbrella operator body SAMTOA from SAHUC. They've got about 15 or 20 operators that have been under their belt. And those operators, some of which their members made inquiry, at the time when we opened the process for Hajj operator accreditation, 28th of March, and the closing date was the 11th of April. But they failed to respond by sending us, the application documents. Not a single one of them applied at the time when the deadline had loomed, and only these 4 had applied. So based on the fact that we've got 4 operators that made the effort to do what is necessary, we proceeded with that process. We opened up the, request for accredited or for applications for accredited operators to everybody who's in the travel game, who wants to be a part of the Hajj structure and process. And this is the result we got.
Okay, now I'd heard, and of course that's why we're talking to you, that in fact many would have or have applied, but because there were some outstanding monies to Hajis, I'm not too sure what the details are. That's why they disqualified themselves. Is that not the case?
No, I think, Ashraf, you must understand that there's a lot more that goes behind the scenes in terms of this, distancing or the spat. But in 2020, when SAHUC called for the refunds of funds, it seems as if this was the breaking point between the operators and SAHUC. At the end of the day, we can't just have a blanket closed eye approach to the whole process. The protection of the pilgrim is of paramount and vital to the process and to the structure. We tried everything in our power to get however monies and whatever monies back through the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia from 2020. That was relatively successful and unsuccessful in some quarters as well. But notwithstanding that, operators who were accredited in 2020 had a breach of the code of conduct with us. Now, that breach of code of conduct meant that they needed to come and sit in front of us and have a discussion around it, because there seemed to have been, a sway or a difference of opinion in terms of structure. We needed to make sure that we have clarity in that, and we put that behind us. And that has been the policy with SAHUC over the years. The beauty part of this whole thing is when SAHUC implemented all this code of conduct and all the application processes, at the time, SATOA and SAMTA, prior to them merging into SAMTOA, were part and parcel of SAHUC. And they were then given the opportunity to give input into this process, input into the structures, to make sure that everything is above board and that everything flows according to structure. So it's not a case of whether they decided that they're not going to apply because of money's owing. They needed to have come to the table and had the conversation. They failed to do so. So if you fail to do so, you don't qualify.
But to get clarity, if they had applied and there were monies owing to pilgrims who did not fulfill the Hajj, because of COVID, I understand, would they have fallen, in breach and therefore not been accredited anyway, even if they did apply?
Well, they had to first resolve all the past situations that they were found in. You can't, as I said earlier, you can't have a blanket closed eye approach to the situation. You need to make sure that the righteous processes need to be followed. And if they weren't able to fulfill that, then yes, then they would not have been accredited. Because at the end of the day, if they did what they did back in 2020, and let's just go back there, they paid monies of the pilgrims outside of the electronic Hajj system. So there was no protection for the monies of the pilgrims at that point in time. If they want to do that, then they must have skin in the game. Put your own money at risk, pay your deposits, and obviously you can reclaim it back from the pilgrim once the pilgrim pays you through the electronic Hajj system.
So let's understand this. So what happened in the past? I mean, the pilgrim paid their money in the anticipation of going for Hajj, 2 years ago. They didn't go. We know that, right? Normally, what would have happened? I mean, that money would have gone into a trust account of sorts. Is that correct?
It's supposed to have done so because that's exactly what the operator should have done. But then they claim that the hoteliers and operators in the kingdom were requiring deposits. No issue, pay the deposits, but pay that from your own funds. Don't pay that from a pilgrim's money and put the pilgrim at risk. The Ministry of the of Hajj in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia had stated very clearly that no monies for contracts are to be paid or for services are to be paid outside of the electronic Hajj system. And all the operators were made aware of this prior to us accrediting the Hujjaj and prior to the process being done. One of the operator representatives was with SAHUC at the time that we met with the ministry and its sub-affiliates in this regard. And as a result of which, this has created a problem in the refund of monies to pilgrims.
Okay, so because they use the pilgrims' money to pay the hotels, and the hotels may, and in some cases have not returned the monies, that's another conversation. That from a South African perspective, it's the pilgrim that feels the brunt of the shortage, right? How many people are affected by this?
Well, there was quite a number of people affected by it because it varied across, all the operators and all the pilgrims. But alhamdulillah, the majority of the operators have refunded the people their money. There's probably a handful of operators out there that still have a refund burden that needs to be fulfilled. And we hope that can be resolved soon. But let me just correct something that you said. A pilgrim pays a deposit, or the pilgrim pays the full amount of money to the operator. The operator has every right to pay that money across to the kingdom, but use the mechanism that the kingdom has dictated. Don't use a mechanism, side door or back door process that you want to do. Hoteliers in the kingdom are quite aware of the ministry's requirements, and they can't insist or force you to do what what they've been doing in the past.
So if they'd used the correct mechanism in terms of the Hajj system, that mechanism would have been reversed correctly anyway. There would be no problem.
100%. I don't think we'd be sitting in a situation that we find ourselves today.
Okay. And from a SAHUC point of view, I mean, could that not be something that you had enforced up front to say you have to do this or else?
But we did, and the beauty part is in 2020, this electronic Hajj system did not open. So they couldn't have done the payment through the electronic Hajj system. They would have had to keep that monies in trust. Again, I come back to the differentiating factor. The differentiating factor is, if you're a businessman, you must have skin in the game. And if you have skin in the game, put your own money up at risk to pay your deposits. It's going to be a small amount, 20%, whatever the case may be. At the end of the day, you're going to recoup that from the monies that the pilgrim pays you once they've contracted with you. So there's an anomaly here, and we can't use other people's money to continue forging our business.
Okay, so let's look at the practical issues now going forward, right? So you said that many of them had made inquiries linked to some TOA. They then didn't even submit, so they were not even thrown out. They didn't submit, right? So they are not one of the four. Only 4 submitted, and they're the accredited ones. In practical terms, does that mean if somebody wants to go for Hajj, they can only book through these 4 tour operators?
Absolutely, because from here on in, we have to now activate these operators in the Ministry of Hajj system. And again, the same electronic Hajj system that we spoke about a few minutes ago is what the process will basically roll out through. So these operators will then start the necessary contracting in that system between the hotels and themselves. And once the Hujjaj have confirmed numbers with these operators or contracts with these operators, then all the payments will go through and be channeled through this process. In addition to which, the information of the pilgrim will be put into the system, and the visas will then be issued accordingly out of the electronic Hajj system for the pilgrims to depart. If an operator is not an accredited entity that has not been uploaded or activated in the electronic Hajj system, then unfortunately that operator will not be able to access a visa for that pilgrim.
Okay, now the broader issue of the workings of SAHUC is something that I'm not going to bring up now. It's another conversation for another time. It's an ongoing thing anyway, right? But why do I get a sense that these operators who did not apply, that are linked to Semtawat, they may well be saying, hold it, we're going to form a rebel front here. We're going to ensure that we will create a parallel structure down the line, and therefore we don't even want to recognize SAHUC. Why do I think that?
Well, I think that is exactly what the social media, comments seem to have been portraying, albeit that they're saying that they're not yet to replace SAHUC. At every avenue, you hear that they want to replace us. I mean, if you look at the representativity that attended the CRL back in November 2021, they called for the disbanding or for the dissolvement of SAHUC at that particular point in time. Also, people need to understand what SAHUC's role is. SAHUC is the administrator and regulator of Hajj. We try to maintain the process in terms of fairness, equitability, and transparency in the whole Hajj equation. We are basically lumbered with an indication that we've got a scarcity of quota, and we need to make sure that it goes around to the right people within the right processes. Operators need to be, understanding that they have to apply, they have to conform with, processes, requirements, and rules in order to ensure that they can continue trading in that particular environment. It's not a free-for-all situation, because the minute you have that, Ashraf, you're unfortunately going to be sending pilgrims to a slaughter. At the end of the day, we've seen this happening pre-1995, and that is the reason that gave birth to SAHUC. The Ministry of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Ministry of Hajj, had come through to Ministry of Foreign Affairs in South Africa and said, establish yourselves, form a body, and get this body to basically, oversee and administer the Hajj processes in this country. Because there were far too many pilgrims lying on the side of the road, not getting their services, paying for pilgrimage, and not departing from South Africa.
Okay, last thing for now is, so we've got 4 of these tour operators, right? I think you can answer this in one go. I mean, the 2 things that come to mind is, what is their capacity to deliver, considering I know it's not 3,000 or 5,000 pilgrims, but 1,000 plus. What's their capacity to deliver on that one? And linked to that, I'm aware in the past, I think there's nothing stopping one of these operators roping in one of those others who are not accredited to assist them in some way or the other. They will only be formally accredited, but they could still form part of a collaboration of sorts.
We don't allow that to take place, Ashraf, because at the end of the day, you've got to be guarding against fronting processes. I think the important thing is it creates confusion in the in the Hajji's eyes. If you have a situation like that, these are the 4 operators, and these are the 4 that are going to be responsible for the 1,132 pilgrims, and out of that, obviously, you have to bring worker visas for these operators out of that quota as well. So in terms of capacity, I don't see a capacity issue, because each of those operators have the capacity to deal with this 1,132. And in fact, I believe that it will be comfortably absorbed.
Okay, as far as the two operators and what they think, I'm sure, considering this is my last show, others will pick up on that conversation. But I think from here on, as we always said, when Eid comes up for Ramadan, it does mean the Hajj season is now upon us. So, inshallah, for those who are going for the Hajj, we pray Hajj Maqbool, Hajj Mabrur, and best wishes certainly to SAHUC and your team in getting all this working seamlessly. Thank you for your time, and Eid Mubarak to you.
Jazakallah khairan, and Eid Mubarak to everybody at Salam Media and to the viewers and listeners out there. Allah accept our Ramadan, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Inshallah. I mean, right? You've heard that. You have your own views. I'm sure you do. You can post comments, but I'm pretty sure the rest of the team on Salam Media will cover the story. We'll talk to Zubaydah Jaffer in a moment.